Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we're going to have an in-depth look at the Essendon Football Club and their players that they're going to put out to the park in 2016 and what it holds for SuperCoach, because it greatly affects the way we pick our SuperCoach sides. There's some bargains, there's some ones to really be wary of as well, and that's what this video is about. Nathan Grime has just been signed up as the 9th top-up player, so I thought they've still got one to come, but I think it's probably, now that NAB Challenge is underway, a good time to really do a video like this. I briefly touched on it in another video, but more broadly, this time we're going to have a look at all these top-up players, my thoughts on them, how the ban affects other players on Essendon's list, and a few other players that have, expect to get some more time, and whether they will get game time and in what position, etc., and whether I think they're a good pick for this year, because I do think there are some good options, but I've also seen people go a little too in the other direction and get too carried away with Essendon players. I must say that my thoughts on the Bombers this season is be careful when picking them. I think there is some good buys, no doubt, but you got to be careful, because in reality they're going to be a struggling club. They're going to experiment at times. Some of these top-up players will be mentors. This top-up opportunity means more to others than say a James Kelly or something like that. It's a second chance opportunity. Others, it could be just a mentoring role that leads into coaching down the track. The only other real similarities we have to look at is, of course, the Gold Coast and GWS, their first years. And it's often good to look back upon, I've seen a lot of these great names be top-up players for Essendon, but you look back at the likes of, say, Luke Power, James McDonald, they just didn't fire. They're good names, but they come to the club as more of a mentor role. And I think we'll see a lot of those top-up players. Been reading a few articles, it's not just about the on-field, it's more about leadership and things like that. So that's worth considering. On the flip side, a guy like Michael Riccitelli, renewed his career and had some really good seasons at the Sun. So it is worth considering, and slightly different apples and oranges, I guess, but it is worth considering because it's all we've really got to go from. I'll start with the top-up players, and I'll be pretty short with some of them, and others I think are worth considering. My main thing with the top-up players is I feel this opportunity means a lot more to others. There's some, as I said, that are just here for some extra experience and to help out the youngsters, and it's an opportunity. They love footy, but it's not do or die. Example is James Kelly and Matty Stokes, the two former Cats. I think they're more your mentor type players. I think they're too old. I've seen them at the Cats. They retired for a reason, albeit they were pushed into it slightly. Their bodies are a concern. They're not the players they once were. Their prices probably rule them out anyway, but they're an example of players that I think be careful of. Just because they're good names, a bit like your Luke Power, they're there at the club for a different reason. Matthew D, just put a line through him. I think he'll struggle to even get game in the best 22. Ryan Crowley is a real man for discussion, I think. 202,000 when he first came to the club. I thought, no way, why bother? He's a tagger. He may get the opportunity to be released, but why bother? It's all of a sudden been really hyped up that he will absolutely be playing an attacking role, and now he's just dominated the intra-club match, by all reports, best on today. So you have to consider him, I think. At first I thought, no, surely not. But he could really get a serious role in that midfield with the likes of Goddard, Zaharakis, Cooney and things like that. He's not going to cop a tag, of course. He may tag at times, but I think at that 200k, he must be considered. Don't just lock him in, because there could be a lot of better options around that 123 mark. I think he's a guy I'll have high on my radar and see how he goes through the NAB Challenge. But to pay that extra 70, 80k is always risky. It's a real guideline I go with those top-end drafties that I'll talk about later. But he must be considered. If he's dominating that much and is going to get pure midfield game time, he just has to be considered. So strongly look at Crowley. He's really growing on me. Polkinghorner is another player that I think at this point in time it may look like he may struggle to make the best 22, but I think if he can, and I personally think he will, I think he's a very good pickup. 123,000 in your midfield, so you can lock him in a bargain basement price. He won the VFL Best and Fairest for Essendon last year. He's 27 years old, averaged 20 odd touches in the VFL, tackles, wins the hard ball. Obviously only played 94 games at Brisbane and left there, but this is the sort of example of a guy who's got a point to prove. So he's definitely a man that, if he can have a good NAB challenge, could feature quite heavily in Essendon's 22. So at a bargain basement price, he's worth considering. Jonathan Simpkin is a man that I really like. 223k, he's a mid-forward, and I think he'd be one of the more popular players that is selected for the Bombers, along with Crowley and SuperCoach scenes. dominates at VFL level. He's been in a few clubs, Geelong, Hawthorn, just struggles to crack it consistently, often a victim of the vest when he does. But at 28 years old, I feel he's still got a point to prove, and a player that's got plenty of drive and still could crack it at AFL level for a couple more years. Definitely, as I said, he dominates at VFL level. He's a smart footballer, runs to the right spots, knows how to find the ball, and it's just an old school smart footballer. So I think he'll be probably featuring the best 22, I would imagine, and if he does, definitely jump on him, because I think while it's a slightly awkward price tag, I think he could be very, very valuable. Mark Jamar, Sam Grimley and Nathan Grimer, you don't even really have to worry about it. Don't have to worry about them. You might slightly worry about how they affect some other players that are very SuperCoach relevant, but as far as they go, definitely don't be picking them. Some other players to look at: Nick Comer. The question mark is definitely on his body, whether that can hold up. He's had some real knee struggles. He's a mid forward at 123k, so he's a great price and should get opportunity, but the question mark is just if he can get his body running, and even so, I feel he may be slightly on the fringe. But he's a player that, if he can crack it, he's at a great price and should get opportunity. Craig Bird, a lot of discussion about him, and I've seen him in a lot of teams, and for me, it's a straight up no. He's 348k, and he's just not for me. It's too awkward of a price, and I just don't feel he offers great value. A lot of people saying that coming to a new club, going to get heaps of opportunity through the midfield. That may be all well and true, but throughout his career, he's averaged anywhere from 63 to 73, and he had that boom in 2014 where he averaged 88. Now, a lot of people will be looking at 2014 hoping he can return to some of that form. I see it as quite unlikely. I think he might find a bit of a spike in his numbers and average somewhere in the 80s. But to be honest, at 348, I really feel like you'd be wanting at least that 88 for sure. I mean, there's more cash to be made elsewhere, and he's not going to be a keeper. So that's where I like to keep it pretty simple. And for me, Craig Bird, not a pick that I'll be looking at personally, but he has been quite popular. I touched on who Nathan Grimer could impact. Michael Hartley and Mitch Brown, I think they will both play, but Grimer coming to the club slightly affects it, I think. Hartley, a VFL Team of the Year centre-half back, which was pretty impressive. He's a big body player, 199 centimetres, 100 kilos. He's ready to go, and I think he'll lock down a role at full-back or centre-half back for the Bombers. You can lock him in a defence, cheap as chips, so lock him away. As too is Mitch Brown, another dominant VFL performer. After not making it as a cat and largely as a forward, he's gone back and he's just had great form at VFL level. Isn't your big bodied like a Hartley, but he is a very good intercept marker, reads the play well, and I think he's finally gotten to know the game, and he's yet to make it at AFL level. That's always been the problem. He's always dominated VFL level, but I think with his new role in the back line, he's really cemented himself as a really good defender in VFL level. It's his best opportunity ever, so he'll get plenty of opportunity, and as a defender, I think he's 123k. You just got to lock him in. A couple of youngsters, Darcy Parish and Aaron Francis. Top picks, yes, they'll play games, yes, they're talented, yes, they'll see plenty of midfield time, but I won't be picking them. I think at 202k and 198k respectively, I do it every time. If a top-end player from the draft is priced up there, which they always are, being a top 20 pick, I just think it's too risky. Unless they're absolute stars like your Selwoods, your Ollie Wines, there's always exceptions. But I think they're going to struggle. They'll be managed throughout the year. These top-up players will take a little bit of the bulk of the midfield as well. And I just think we have such a range of great options through the midfield from 200k to 320k. I just think they're too risky. Great players, great picks down the track, but I think at this point in time, there's just better options. They'll get games for sure, but I think at 198k and 202k, it's too much to pay in my liking, but you can pick them if you like. A couple other youngsters, Alex Morgan, Mason Freeman, picks 29 and 30 from memory in last year's draft. Like Parish and Francis, they'll get some opportunity for sure. Just being youngsters, they're going to give games to these players because it's more of an experimental year. But I don't think they'll feature too strongly. If they have good NAB challenges and debut round one, that's when they may come into consideration, but probably not at this point in time. David Zaharakis, we'll have a look at a few players on the actual list. Zaharakis I've seen relatively popular at times. Yes, he's going to shoulder a lot of the midfield time, but at 414k, a bit like Craig Bird, it's just not good enough value or good enough scoring potential. He's never shown his ability to go 90 plus big time. I think he's had a 91, 92 average year. I could see him averaging 95-ish to maybe 100 on a good day. But I just don't see his value in picking him at 414,000. Yes, he'll really step up. Yes, he's got a more leadership role and responsibility at the Bombers now. But I just don't think he's shown that ability to really go premium status. I think if he was a forward option, you'd lock him in. But as a pure midfielder, he's not going to make you enough money, and he's certainly not going to be a keeper. And as I said, there's plenty of great cheap options for us in the midfield. So I'll be passing past Zaharakis there. Zach Merritt in the forward line, 477k. Played good intra-club today, midfield time. I'd strongly consider him, I really would. He's a bit pricey, a bit risky. That price makes him, that tad bit of risk because he is young. He should get midfield minutes, no doubt. And the way he finished last year was super impressive. You can see my thoughts on that in the Essendon preview. But I think he'll be one that's strongly considered for good reason. I think he's got a lot of talent, a lot of upside, and a decent price if you think you go 100 plus. So, and Leuenberger, I've talked about him a bit in the past. Of course, he's a lock now. He's going to have that number one ruck role. His body's the only question. He's a great price. He's a quality player. If you can get on the park, you'll be picking him. So that's my thoughts on the Bombers, and a few players I think that are really relevant and some that are being talked about that I don't think are relevant. So I think that's a fairly decent wrap-up. My thoughts on how Essendon will approach the year, I think it'll be more experimental, and that's why it's risky when picking these players. Sometimes they'll be looking for the win. Some weeks they'll be, playing extra minutes for younger guys. Sometimes they'll play him in this role, in that role. They'll play a top-up player. Next week they'll rest him, mentoring this, mentoring that. I don't think there's going to be much consistency about the Bombers, and I think that's why they're a great option to look for younger players and our rookie players, because I think they'll get opportunity, they'll get game time, and they'll make us cash. But when picking premiums or players a little more expensive than your 200k, that's when it's a little more risky, because it doesn't mean enough to the Bombers to just win each week. This year is just a year to experiment, see how it goes, rebuild from the bottom. And coming with that is that those top-up players, sometimes they'll be rested, sometimes they'll have other roles. They'll be opting for the more youth, of course, because down the track you're going to be wanting those players, not the top-up players at your club. So that's worth considering. You must consider that, and how Essendon's season will pan out and what's at stake for them. They are going to be a bottom two club, you would have to say. So try to not just pick too many Bombers. I think there's some great buys in there, but don't go crazy just because you're looking for a young player at 120k and he's got an Essendon logo next to him doesn't mean you pick him. I think these are the most relevant players. If you think I've missed anyone, let me know, but I think I've done a fairly good wrap up there. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Certainly subscribe to the channel, because we're really getting underway with the SuperCoach now as NAB Challenge has begun. Give me your thoughts in the comments, because that's always good, and stay tuned for plenty more videos, because there's plenty more to come down the track.